Hello and welcome to the chicken pen. During this year I've shown lots of videos on the breeding season for our Buff Orpington chickens. You might be looking at them and thinking you'd like to keep chickens too. So this is the first in a series of videos that's just for you. So join me on this journey. Hello, my name's Fiona. This series of videos is designed to show you lots of different aspects of chicken keeping. Now, it's not intended to dictate how you should keep your chickens. What I'll do is I'll show you various things which we considered and the options that we chose as a result, and tell you why we didn't choose other options. What we chose may not be right for you, but it'll give you hopefully enough information to make the right choice for you and your chickens. So join me and we'll cover this first aspect, which is space and housing.
Let's talk about space, and I'd love to show you around our chicken enclosure. And we're lucky enough to have a field right beside our house and gardens. So let's have a walk around and I'll show you what we've got. The first big consideration for us was not to set up the enclosure as one large square or rectangle. We've set it up in a series of small sections. This allows us to throw a small fence across the entrance to each section, so if we need to isolate any hens or small group of hens, we can do that easily. It might be just to observe them, they may be ill, they may be behaving strangely, and it just makes life so much easier. We've got lots of shelters, sand baths, areas they can hide from each other, run away from each other, play in, and it's all very irregular. The second thing we wanted to consider was that we wanted to keep chickens on grass, so we needed to give a huge area. Chickens are very destructive. They eat the grass and they scratch it up. Now, grass doesn't grow in winter, so when we go down to a dozen chickens during the winter season, it needs to be large enough that the grazing doesn't take the grass away. And in summer, when we breed up and get to an average of 40 hens, the grass is going to be enough to stand up to that many chickens eating it. Let me introduce you to Barbie and her two chicks, who are going to give us a very practical demonstration on just how destructive chickens can be to grass and grassy areas. She's teaching her chicks to hunt for grubs and for worms and teaching them to graze. At the same time, she's scratching out grass, she's scratching out thatch, and you can start to see areas of bare earth starting to appear. One of the reasons for allowing your chickens to graze is that greenery provides something called carotenoids. These make the yolks of the eggs from your chickens incredibly creamy and rich. Now, it's no big deal if your chickens don't have access to grass, because you can still get this creaminess by supplementing the diet with cabbage or broccoli or chard or other greenery that you have in the garden. So it's not the end of the world, but it's easier if you just have grass available, and that's what we chose to do.
This is one of the areas that we're actually repairing, and all we do is surround it with some wire mesh, which is held into the ground with bamboo canes so the chickens can't get through to any seed. We reseed it, we water it every day, and that repairs these patches. Just because we've got a very large area doesn't mean that we don't repair the grass at all due to chicken damage. It just means that they still have access to grass elsewhere in the enclosure. A very important aspect to consider is shade and shelter for your chickens. I'm actually stood under a tree because our chicken enclosure is kept in the orchard. So all of the chickens have foliage cover in summer to keep the hot beating sun off them. They also have the added advantage that they've got fallen fruit such as cherries and apples and plums that they can just munch away on when they hit the ground. Now, if you don't have the advantage of an orchard or tree cover that the chickens can be provided with, you could provide artificial shelters like this one behind me. It's just a basic wooden structure. But what it does do is when it's raining, it stops chickens getting absolutely soaked. Now, they're not always that clever. Sometimes they will just stand out in the rain, but if they really don't want to be cold, wet and miserable, they go inside these shelters and stay a little bit dry. If you have a run attached to your coop, you could simply put a piece of tarpaulin over one end, but make sure it's secure so it's not flapping around, because that will actually scare the hens. There's lots of different ways that you can provide shade and shelter for your chickens.
So let's take a closer look at this first design of shelter. It's two simple A-frames joined together with a small platform and a perch on top. And as you can see, Tango is demonstrating the benefit of this little shelter arrangement. They do like being in here to seek shelter from the sun. This is another design which is really simple to make. It's a straightforward box construction with one side open, and the roof is extended to provide a little lip to keep the rain off when it's really pouring down. Again, this is another shelter that the chickens spend a lot of time in, particularly when it's raining, because it does keep them dry. You wouldn't believe how many big Buff Orpington chickens can actually fit in this very small shelter. It's quite surprising. As part of their daily healthcare routine, chickens need to clean themselves. Humans have showers and baths and use water to take dirt away. Chickens do something completely different. They'll use dry substances, either soil or sand, to scrub away excess grease from their feathers, and also to take away mites or creepy crawlies that are hiding inside their feathers. Here we've added giant tractor tyres with red builder sand, and two of our chickens are happily scrubbing themselves. If you don't have the advantage of this kind of space, you could add a planter's gravel tray into your run, fill it with sand, and your chickens can use that to clean themselves. If the run is small, that all of the grass has been removed, they'll just dig a hole in the soil and clean themselves that way. Some owners, if they're cleaning the coop out every single day and removing feces and the poop that they put in there, they'll add diatomaceous earth into their wood shavings inside the coop, and the chickens will use that to clean themselves. There are lots of alternatives. I admit that our chickens are completely spoilt. We've got a second sand bath with a tractor tyre and red builder sand, but this time we put a cover over it. It's nothing fancy. It's part of my old swing seat with some corrugated metal sheeting over the top so that the builder stand stays dry even in the wettest weather.
Let's talk about housing for your chickens. When we started keeping chickens, we bought coops in. We now make them, but I thought let's start with one that we bought. This is a design that is widely commercially available. On the far side, it's got a nest box which runs the entire length of the coop, and it's got this great bit on this side. There's two hatches which come down and allow you to easily get in and clean the coop. You need to be able to scoop the poop. If you can't do it easily, it becomes very, very difficult to clean out. The other thing I particularly like about this coop is it's got an up and down door, and it's got space at the top for this little grey box. Now this is something we've added on, and this is a unit which is an auto opener, and it's made by a company called Chicken Guard. There are others on the market, but we do prefer Chicken Guards. It can be programmed to close and open based on light levels. So in midsummer, when it's light at 4 AM, you can program it so that it opens and lets your chickens out as soon as it's dawn. And in the depth of winter, if you're not home from work to shut those chickens up, the door comes down when it's dusk and your chickens are all safe. What this does, it means that you have better protection from any predators like foxes or badgers, that an open door can just be an invitation. So we love these, absolutely recommend them. Do think about it. Hello, Tango. This is another coop that we've got, and it's got one big advantage over the last coop that you saw. It's actually on wheels, and it has these wheelbarrow handles at the front which allow us to lift it up and move it around the enclosure. Now this was made by a local carpenter, so it's not commercially available, but we do like the fact that it's on wheels, and we stole this idea when we started to make our own coops a little bit later on. The big downside and disadvantage of the last coop that you saw is the door. As you can see, it's a simple flap arrangement, which actually means we can't put an auto opener or closer on it, so it's a little less secure for the chickens. We tend to use this as a last resort, so it will be used for isolating any chickens which are a little bit ill and needs to be observed and kept away from the others. Or it might be used if we've got lots and lots of broody hens and we're running out of coops, but it will be one of the last ones that we'll actually use out of choice. So this is the very first coop that my great husband actually made for us. He's given it an up and down door so we can put an auto opener on it. He's put it on wheels so we can move it around, and there's wheelbarrow handles at the back so it can easily be moved around the enclosure. There's one nest box at the back. Our Buff Orpingtons love to sleep together in one great big mass of feathers, and they also like to lay their eggs together. One very important aspect for us is this opening roof. And it opens on one side, and there's a central strut which comes out and also acts as a prop, which means cleaning this coop is an absolute cinch. It's so easy. Now Cindy's actually in here laying at the moment, so I'm going to close this up and leave her alone. This was the next coop that was made. The last one was made for our Buff Orpingtons, who prefer to actually sleep on the floor on the wood shavings that we give them for bedding. This coop was made for our egg layers. Now they prefer to actually sleep and roost while perching. In the spirit of smallholder mend and make do, it was put onto the bed of an old trailer that we had, so it can easily be moved around. It's still on wheels, and it's such a robust construction because it's actually got a steel base. But let me show you inside this coop.
The perches are very simple. They're just two long bars either side of the coop that allow the chickens to perch and sleep and roost at night. If they choose to sleep on the shavings, they can go through the doorway on the left-hand side, which leads to a nest box, and they can cuddle up in there and sleep in a pile of feathers just like the Buff Orpingtons do. One thing we do need to talk about is ventilation. It's so important in your coops that stale air can get out and fresh air gets in. This is what we've done, and I would say please look out for ventilation in any coop you buy. We've put some steel mesh on the inside to stop any predators getting in, and we've also fitted a slide which we can push across a little bit in winter to keep the coop a little bit warmer, and fully open it in summer to keep the coop a little bit cooler.
I hope you found that useful. Now don't forget, this is the first in a series of videos about keeping chickens, so do come back for the next instalment. If you would take a moment to give me a thumbs up if you'd like the content, please do. If there's anything in particular you want me to cover in this series, leave me a comment and I'll do my best to make it happen. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe now and click the notifications icon to get to know of any new videos we post, including the next in the series. Thanks for watching, and I really look forward to seeing you next time.